You are now listening to Out of the Blank.
Tell me a little bit about yourself, man.
Well, my name is Kurtis Clark, and I am currently living in Madison, Alabama, right outside of Huntsville, about an hour north of Guntersville Lake for all you fishermen out there. It's the best lake in the world. But I'm 39 years old and just moved down here about a year ago, and am really happy to be down here. I'm living a life that I've always wanted to live. So
What's
I'm
a
very
life
happy.
you've always wanted to live?
One that I can be next to. So I mentioned Guntersville Lake already. So Guntersville Lake is ranked the number 2 bass fishing lake in all of America by BASS, one of the biggest bass tournament fishing organizations. I've been fishing off and on my whole life, and Guntersville's always been a dream of mine to fish. Well, now I live by it. And I, like, this past Saturday, I was fishing Guntersville Lake. Like, I fish a lot, and being next to one of the premier lakes in the country is just something that I've wanted to do for a long time. And I get to do that, and I'm happily married, and my wife is super awesome and lets me go and fish whenever I want, pretty much, as long as she doesn't have things planned, because wives always have something planned when you really want to do something. So, but no, it's awesome. I have a beautiful wife, and I love her to death, and she's just always there by my side, pushing me to do better in my life.
Happy wife, happy life, man. Let me tell you, how did you get into fishing? Because first of all, for someone that has fished, and I've only fished with a really crappy fishing rod, I wouldn't even call it fishing. It's more like you just went to the store, your parents bought you a little tiny plastic rod, was like, hey, why don't you go have fun for an hour with the lake? I think the biggest thing I've ever caught, my most prized accomplishment, I caught a trash can.
Well, okay, that weighs more than anything I've ever caught, especially if it was full of water.
It was full of water. It took me forever. And at this point, I was not even cranking the thing to get the string rolling up. I was just pulling the rod, because I hooked the little handle. And dude, it's funny. We were camping, and it was just at a local campground. I caught this giant waste basket. I'm talking about one of the ones you see at like Disney parks, like not a metal one, but a plastic one. But dude, we still use that today. I see it, and my dad's like, remember when you fished that out of the water? I'm like, yeah, my most prized trophy achievement. Let's put it on the wall, put it on a little plaque. I think when it comes to fishing, it's very you have to have a sense of patience. And dude, let me tell you something. I have ADHD. I can't sit down for 5 minutes without needing to do something else. When I was fishing that whole time, I just kept tossing, reeling it back in, tossing, reeling it back in. So how do you sit there and just wait and just enjoy time? How do you do that?
Okay, so I am ADD too. So that's why I bass fish. Because bass fishing isn't you just go to a lake, you throw something in, and you hope something bites. Bass fishing is like right now, I think sitting in the bed of my truck, I have 4 or 5 fishing bags full of lures. And every single one of them I throw out, and each one of them has different presentations and stuff. But it's like some of them you just bounce off the bottom of the lake and reel while you're bouncing. Some of them you just throw out and you just reel right in. So you're always doing, in bass fishing, 99% of the time, you're always doing something. And bass are a beautiful fish. They're extremely that's not fickle, kind of, but they're a wild animal. They have instincts. They do exactly what they're going to do every single time. It's just figuring out what they're hungry for. Because I've got stuff that looks like frogs. I've got stuff that look like other fish. I've got different lures that make noise. I've got lures that literally, when you throw them out there and they hit the water, they have computer chips in them that start making noise. They're made by Livingston Lures, and they are the coolest freaking crankbait I have ever used in my life. They're not the cheapest.
Do you prefer that over the classic worm?
No. The plastic worm is, well, the plastic worm is.
said that. No.
Okay. No, no. So everything has a place. Everything has a place. So if I'm gonna throw like a Livingston crankbait, because I like those, and I have quite a few of them, and I've lost a lot of them. When I'm throwing those, I'm using those around very specific things. A classic old plastic worm, and I'll use like one of like 3 or 4 different colors. Like I'll use a watermelon or a green pumpkin, or a green pumpkin with chartreuse tail, which is like a neon yellow color, or a red shad color worm. I will throw those. I think when I was out at the lake Saturday, I think I had a plastic worm on my line for probably 95% of the time I was out there.
Now,
That is my
I do have a question because you're talking to someone that really does not know anything about fishing. Is it
no
true?
problem.
Is it true that like when it comes to what bass eat, like you were saying, they'll eat like a variety of things? Is that because of they have what are known as like bucket mouths?
Okay, so bucket mouth is a nickname that largemouth bass have. So we'll say there's two major types of bass. There's a largemouth bass and a smallmouth bass. Now, in largemouth bass, there are many different variations, but they all have a large mouth. They call them a bucket mouth because big ones, like I've caught one right at 10 pounds, a little over 10 pounds. And when you're holding a 10-pound bass, it's like holding a small bucket, like a 2-gallon bucket. Like the mouth is gigantic. You can put both fists in this mouth and never touch the sides.
Holy
Like
crap!
like it's huge. It's absolutely insane. My buddy actually missed a largemouth on Saturday. And when he came up, he out of the water and jumped, he had his mouth open. And by the size of the mouth and the size of the body, guys that fish a lot usually can tell you about how big they weigh. And I would tell you every bit that fish weighed 7 to 8 pounds, every bit, if not a little bit bigger. The mouth was just so freaking massive. So back to your question. So yes, they have a bucket mouth, but the reason they'll eat so much different stuff is because you go to any lake, there's going to be a plethora of different types of fish and food and crawdads, just all kinds of stuff for them to eat. They're not really that picky. They just, at certain times of the year, they know that like shad, it's like a minnow type looking thing. They know that shad are spawning right there, right then at that time of the year. So they're going to go wherever the shad are spawning, and they're going to eat them up as many shad as they can. Or the bluegill are spawning, or brim for some people, depending on what part of the country you live in. And bluegill, they spawn at a different time of the year than the shad do. Everything spawns at a different time. And spawning is them, getting their groove on and laying eggs and having babies and stuff.
Getting down to
So,
town, yeah. Well,
yeah.
when you think about fishing, though, like, what was your like? How did you even decide, like, first of all, to narrow it down to bass fishing? Like, do you go out anywhere else? Like, do you try to catch swordfish? Do everything that other, like, I guess, fishermen would try to do, or do you try to just strictly limit to what you know?
Okay. So, growing up, my first memories ever with my dad was on the side of a lake. My dad was an avid fisherman. He fished literally as much as he possibly could. He didn't care what day of the week it was, what time of the day it was. He's like, if I've got an hour and a half, I'm going to go fishing. So I spent a lot of time. My dad would be like, hey, I'm going out to the lake. Want to go? And I wanted to spend time with my dad. So I said, yeah. Well, I did a lot of crappie fishing and bluegill fishing and stuff like that, which is a different style of fishing. So I grew up around fishing my whole life. Me and my brother both. My brother's 11 years older than me. He's like 50 or something.
You
Yeah,
were
I
more
think
like
50.
born into fishing.
I was born around water, and like I was born around fishing. We moved to Virginia Beach when I was 16 years old, and when I lived in Virginia Beach, we didn't have a lot of lakes. So my dad didn't do a lot of like bass fishing or freshwater fishing at all. He did mostly saltwater fishing. Well, I'm 16 years old at the time, and I don't want anything to do with fishing because that's not cool. And the girls don't like fishermen, At least that's what I thought. I was totally
You
wrong.
thought they didn't
But
judge you, but they judged you really on the size of your rod. Am I right?
exactly. That's exactly what it was. And so my dad did a lot of saltwater fishing, and I would take my dad fishing twice a year around his birthday and Father's Day every year, never missed a year. And we would always go out to the piers and stuff around Virginia Beach. And like we would go to the 15th Street Pier and fish off the pier there, or there's another one off a shore drive that we would go to that was a really cool pier. And we would go, and it would usually consist of me fishing for an hour. And then the second one I mentioned, the one off a shore drive, they had a little pool table. So I'd go and play pool for the next 3 or 4 hours while my dad fished. But my dad got to do what he really enjoyed. And I was there, and I'd go and check on him every half an hour, 45 minutes or so.
Make sure he's still okay. You didn't get dragged
make sure
in
he's
by
okay.
jaws or anything.
Right. Well, and I've caught quite a few saltwater fish. I've caught them. I've caught a ray, not like a stingray, like killed, freaking crocodile hunter, which is an awful shame. He was an amazing dude. I've caught big manta rays and stuff, and different kinds of rays and stuff, or skates or whatever you want to call them. I've caught, all kinds of different saltwater fish, and they're a lot of fun. I've been deep sea fishing out on the boats, on charter boats in North Carolina or in Virginia, and it's a lot of fun. After that, I moved to Missouri. So Missouri's kind of landlocked. If nobody's noticed, we have the Mississippi River and the Missouri River. They kind of intersect, but we also have a ton of freshwater lakes. So I would always go fishing for what I knew, what time of the year it was, what time of the day it was. So there was like sometimes of the year I would go trout fishing. Sometimes of the year I would go cat fishing. So most of the year I would still be bass fishing on top of those other ones. Like right now, living in Alabama, I do a lot of bass fishing, but I'm waiting about 2.5, 3 months because there's a bass called the striped bass, and they start hitting really hard in the fall and winter times, and I've never fished for those. So I'm really excited to try those. They're a little bit different techniques and different stuff to fish for. So it's just been if I have a buddy that says, hey, let's go bluegill fishing, I'll say, all right, I'll grab a thing of live worms and I'll meet you at the lake. Like, I don't care what I fish for. As long as I've got a rod and reel in my hand and I'm standing next to the water or I'm on my boat, I am a happy man.
So you have more of a fascination just with the art of fishing, just because you were impacted in such a way where you bonded with your dad and got to experience something a lot of kids don't really get to experience.
Very true. Very true. I grew up, like I have a couple friends that have been like, oh yeah, I fish. And then we go to the lake and it's no offense to anybody, but as an avid fisherman as I am, and I'm halfway decent at it. I'm not great at it. I'm not no pro or anything, but I'm okay at it. I'm relatively good and better than most. But when they're like, "Oh yeah, I fish all the time, man. I caught this size bass, blah blah blah." I'm like, "Oh, that's great." And then I'm like, "Let's go fishing." That's the first response. And then they show up with a $20 Walmart rod, which there's nothing wrong with. I believe there are some very amazing rods and reels at every price point, from a $20 rod and reel all the way up to the reel that I want is $650. I'll probably never own one, but I want one. But they show up with this $20 rod and reel. They've got a tackle box that's 20, 30 years old that has like 8 things in it. To me, yes, you fish, but don't tell other people, oh my God, yeah, I fish all the time. I'm a great fisherman. Brag about yourself. And you might be really good, but when every fish you catch is a pound, that to me, it's always a competition.
Why
I
do
have
you
2 buddies that I go fishing with.
Why do you consider it a competition though?
Because I'm a guy. everything's a competition in life. Like
Oh, that's
fishing,
true. Yeah.
I'm a guy. If I'm hanging out with my buddies, I've got to outdo my buddy.
Oh yeah,
Like
for
that's
sure.
like I have two buddies. Like we when me and these two guys go fishing. Now, mind you, right now all three of us live in different states, but we still see each other regularly. And so when either two of us get together, the goal is to catch a 6-pack. And a 6-pack means that you're going to catch 6 fish. And the first one to catch the 6 fish basically gets bought a 6-pack.
Damn, that's a good way to go.
Right?
So you create a game
not
out of it, and then that's where the
right.
competition gets kicked in. You create it, you make it in a fun way, not like, oh, you caught a fish, man. I'm not fishing with you anymore. I didn't catch anything.
No. And I saw on Facebook the other day this wonderful meme, and it's like the best fishing partner is the guy that just fishes just a little worse than you are. And I'm like, that's kind of true, because like me and my buddy Larry, he's my best friend, one of my best friends. He's awesome dude. Like we've done so much fishing together, like more than probably anybody but my dad and my brother with me and everything. And me and him go fishing, and we have days we go out and he'll catch 10. I'll catch 1. We'll go out the next day, same place. I'll catch 15. He'll catch 2. So it's like this, it's those daily bragging rights that you just,
Would you consider it more of luck, or would you consider it more of, I guess, having the proper equipment? Because I can tell you, with the way you were explaining getting a Walmart fishing rod, like that person could just as easily catch more fish and actually catch a fish, and you couldn't catch anything.
very true. And believe me, it happens all the time. So I believe there is a lot of skill involved in being consistently good at fishing. Because if you could go to Walmart right now and go to the fishing aisle or two that they have, and you will see 30 different color worms. You will see 20, 30 different types of crankbaits in all different colors. You will find 20, 30 different types of buzz baits and 20, 30 different types of spinner baits, all these different kinds of stuff. And all of those work. They really do. And that person that's never fished before that could go out and tear me up, they could have gotten lucky. They could have that day because they picked the right thing at Walmart that day to catch, and just happened to be at the right area to where those fish liked what they had. And that is true. That happens a lot. I watch a lot of the pros, and these guys, a lot of the guys talk about, oh my God, I was throwing everything they should have been eating, and the guy 10 feet from me, he was just junk fishing. He was throwing whatever he had tied on and just couldn't stop catching them. And so some of it is luck, but there is a lot of skill to know where the fish are going to be at what time of the year, what
Well,
colors
you can relate exactly what you just said about the dude that was just throwing whatever he could tie onto his hook out there. It's adapting. Like, sometimes the fish want a certain bait. Sometimes, it's like if I give you the option of eating Frosted Flakes every day, if you're me, you're going to want that option. But sometimes I'm going to change it up after a year or two. I'm going to be like, you know what? I'm tired of the same crunchy cereal over and over again. I want to change it up and maybe have a nice, like, pudding or something soft. You
yeah.
want. It's all about like kind of creating variety in your life. And do you have to do a lot of research when it comes to, just the amount, like you were saying, like, yeah, you want to know like the proper tools, the proper things that are out there, but 100% of the time they're not going to work. There's going to be that 0.1% or 10% where it's going to be just a roll of the dice of how the day went.
So I tend to hyper focus because I'm like super passionate about fishing. So I really do a lot of research. I've read so many articles. So I also have a podcast where I talk to fishermen and everything, like pro fishermen and stuff. So I talk to those guys too and try to get tips from them and all that. So I've done a lot of research, but when you boil it all down, I go out there and I end up fishing and catching fish with the stuff I'm confident with, stuff that I know that works, and stuff that I know how to present to the fish better than anything else in my bag for that time of the year.
Like, what do you mean by present? You mean like do you dress up your
Like,
bait or make it like super fancy or
so,
super edible?
um, kinda. So presentation, when you talk about presentation in fishing, presentation is like a plastic worm. During the winter time, if you throw out a plastic worm and you have your little slide weight in front of it or whatnot, and you throw it out there and you just let it sink. Well, you want in the winter, I'll sit there and I'll literally count to one, like count to 10. I'll count slowly before I ever even move that worm. And then I'll bounce it once. And then I'll count to 5 or 6. And then I'll bounce it off the bottom once. What's going to happen is fish are really, really slow and lethargic during the winter. When the water temperatures go down, they get very, very lethargic. They don't want to.
Hibernation mode.
Yeah, it's a hibernation mode. They're not going to move around very much. They're going to they want to know the size of the thing that they're going to have to move, because going after something takes a lot of energy when they're in that hibernation mode.
I know some people that fall into a hibernation mode.
I'm kind of one of them. I have to force myself out of it. So, but during the summer, I can throw it out there and wait, let it hit the ground and bounce it. Let it hit the bottom, bounce it. Let it hit the bottom and bounce it, because they're much more active. They have much more energy. So it's all about how you present your bait to the fish. That's what I mean by like how I present it to them. Now, like plastic worms during the winter, I use a lot more like fish attractant sprays. Like I'll use this spray. There's a spray called Bang. I use that and I'll spray it on my plastic worm or my plastic crawdad, and you throw it out there, and that smell just kind of seeps off into the water, and fish will be like, "Oh, what's that?" And they'll kind of be attracted and want to know what that smell is, and come over to see what is making that smell. So you keep throwing, you throw a few more times. If nothing bites, you move over a little bit and then you do it again. And, so it's just all about presentation and different. Like um, if it's overcast, like an overcast day where there's lots of clouds and stuff, I'm not going to throw something that's a bright yellow or orange or green or something like that, because in nature, if it's overcast, all the fish underwater are going to see are the shadows of the stuff as it goes through, because there's no light shining off of those things. So I'm going to use darker things. I'm going to present those fish with darker buzz baits or crankbaits or darker colored things that would mimic what is really what they're seeing by all the other bait fish and all the other shad and different fish that are in the water.
You understand what you're saying. A lot of people don't even take into account how much the weather affects the water. Like I've worked, I'm from a beach town. I worked all over through the ocean and the bay. I happen to live in one of the places that's surrounded by both. So on one side we have the bay, on the other side we have the ocean. I've been a jet ski guide. I've been any type of thing you can think of that has to deal with the water when it comes to water sports or water activities. Let me tell you something. People want to jet ski when it's thunderstorming out, and you wonder why. Usually the water half the time is pretty flat during a storm. They say the calm before the storm. That's not always entirely true. Now, the ocean is the best predictor of what the weather is going to be like. I can tell you, when I go to work every morning, when I see the water is nice and flat, it's going to be a pretty smooth day. Then when I start to see the water react funny, where I start to see a lot of I guess white tips or breaks, where I start to see like the water, splashing everywhere. It seems like it's kind of rough out. I'm like, oh, there's a storm definitely coming. Whether it's going to hit us or not, I'm going to be aware for it. That experience is because I have experience being out in the middle of a northeastern and the water waves in the bay where I was jet skiing being as high as the ocean, renters flipping off their jet skis, me hopping in the water, trying to risk my life to save them just for $70 an hour. And, I wasn't getting paid $70 an hour. That's how much it cost to rent the jet ski. I know.
Right.
I would definitely risk my life for $70 an hour. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, me too. I totally would.
But like,
And
it's all about experience, and a lot of people don't understand when you're dealing with weather. The fact that you can correlate what type of bait you have to use in the water and base it on the shadows of what the fish are going to see. A lot of people are like, I don't think fish are that smart. It's not that they're being super smart. It's called being adaptive.
yeah, it's being adaptive. I mean, light only shines through like bright sunny days. The light rays only go down so far. On an overcast day, there's no bright sunny. There's no bright sun rays coming down into that water to reflect off of the bodies that show off these pretty colors. So, and it's not something that I've necessarily learned over experience. Part of it is, but I've also read about it and tried to figure out how the weather affects it. And living in Virginia Beach for 16 years, when you talk about being able to look at the water and be like, oh, there's a storm coming. I worked at the oceanfront for years in Virginia Beach. And every day when I worked at the hotels at the oceanfront, I was an activities coordinator. And I would walk up to our activities office and I'd look out at the ocean and be like, oh, crap. It's going to be an indoor day. And it had nothing to do with the sky. It all had to do with the water.
Yeah, a lot of people don't take into account that. Like, I work at a hotel now, and I'll look out the window and I'll be like, oh, like, look how flat that water looks. Today's going to be a pretty nice day out. Just right in the morning. And then once, like, people are like, oh, the storm, there's apparently going to be a storm coming. I'm like, no, there's not. There's not going to be one, I'm
Right.
telling you. And they're like, how do you know that? I'm like, I just know. Just trust me. I've seen the water. I know how it's going to be. And they're like, all right, whatever. And next, a storm doesn't happen. And then they're like, how did you figure that out? I'm like, because you literally can look out the window, stare at the water, and we have that option, and you can tell what it's going to be like. That is a
Yeah.
skill that you have to truly experience to know. And let me tell you something, it's so beneficial. Do you do a lot of your research about fish? Like, do you find yourself constantly researching? Is this where you get most of your information? Or do you feel like the best tool is experience?
Um, so moving down to Alabama is the greatest thing that's ever happened to me fishing wise, because it's made me learn how to fish differently than I was ever used to anywhere else in the country. Because I've fished in over 10 states. Like, I've fished for every kind of fish you could pretty much think of, minus a few northern ones because I don't go up to the north very often. But I fish for all kinds of stuff. Fishing at Guntersville Lake, it's being as good of a lake as it is, it's an extremely hard lake to fish. So when I got down here, I was like, oh, I know how to fish. I know how to catch any fish on any lake in the country. I was wrong. I was very wrong. So I did a lot of research. I did a lot of research on stuff about that lake particular. I've done a lot of research about the weather. I've done time of the year. I've done how the fish actually move throughout a lake throughout the year, what depths they'll go to. I do a lot of research when I get stuck in a rut. And I take that, but I take all of it with a grain of salt, because you can be when it comes to fishing, you can overcomplicate anything. Like in life, you can overcomplicate anything. If I go out and I know and I do the stuff that I know works because of experience, I do much better than trying to do, oh, well, this article told me I should do this on a day like today. Now I will try that. And if it works, I'm going to add that to my bag of tricks to, throw at these fish. But it's all about getting research. Then 1 out of 10 things might work for me. Now, for somebody else, that thing might not work and something else might work. So for me, it's all about my experiences on top of the research that I've done.
It's
a little both.
Did that give you a better reference for life in a way? Because you realize that like what works for you is not going to work for somebody else?
So in life in general, my wife and I have been dealt a very rough hand over the last few years. We've had a lot of loss in both of our lives in the last 41 months or so. So with having the loss that we have had, we have learned that there is a process for everything. And fishing for me now is more therapy than it is anything else.
You find it as a way to relax.
Yeah, because I don't think about anything else
Yeah,
when
you're
I'm out
not
on the
worried
water.
about your car being out of gas. You're not worried about bills. All you're worried about
Right.
is, am I going to come home with a catch or not?
Right. And to me, that being able to go out there, and I have literally spent 8 hours out on the water on a boat, on my boat last year. I was out there for 7.5, 8 hours, never caught a single fish, and came home with a smile on my face because I was doing something that not everybody has the opportunity to do. I was out on a beautiful lake on my own boat, hanging out, doing something I enjoy. But I might not have been catching fish, but I could look around and see some of the most beautiful scenery I've ever seen. And not everybody gets to experience stuff like that.
Do you think that it's kind of increased a little bit of like your capabilities of dealing with people, like stress overall in life?
Yes, very fully. It's been a thing that you could ask my wife right now. When I'm having a really stressful day, like I'm really stressed out, semi-emotional, whatever, and I'm going to look at my wife and be like, honey, I'm going to the lake. And she's like, okay, bye. And she knows that's my way to get centered again, to get back to who I am, not letting those outside stuff bother me as much. It helps center me. I know that being out there, I've been out on the lake and had a storm pop up on me out of the blue. Alabama has this weird thing, and I didn't know it last year, where it rains pretty much every day, kind of like in Florida. It rains at least for 5-10 minutes almost every single day during the summer. And I didn't know that last year when I first got here, and we got stuck out on the water in a torrential downpour that lasted about 8 minutes. And I was freaking out. And afterwards, we got back to the boat dock. We thought more storm was coming. Got to the boat dock, got the boat out of the water. We started heading home. There was no more rain. And I'm like, wow, I really overreacted. And it just, things like that help me realize that you don't have to overreact to everything, because I'm a very emotional person when it comes to dealing with things. I'm a very passionate person with everything in life. So when it comes down to, if there's something bad, it's the worst thing that's ever happened. If it's something good, it's the greatest thing that's ever happened. There's very little in between.
Do you find that if I had to ask you, what is one of your most memorable, I guess, best experiences fishing? What would it be? Would it be fishing with your dad, or would it be just a sense of release from kind of the problems we face in the world, like every single day?
So I have 2 days of fishing that mean more than anything to me in the world. Last summer, I got to take my dad to Gunnersville Lake. Him and my mom moved down to Alabama about 3-4 months after we did. And I got to take my dad to Gunnersville Lake. We'd been there a couple times and he hadn't caught anything. Well, I finally got to see him catch a really nice sized bass. Sitting right there, like right next to this like beautiful rock wall that I like fishing. It's just a beautiful area. And he caught a really nice fish, and seeing the smile on my dad's face, that's one of the most memorable things that I remember fishing. That's one of 2. I mean, just the smile, seeing him be able to fish and catch a fish on a lake he's talked about for the last. And my wife and I first met about 6.5, 7 years ago, 7.5 years ago. a little after we've been together, she's like, I want to go fishing. And
You were all
it's like,
for that.
no, I was actually not that into fishing at the time. So I grew up fishing, but then I tell everybody I took a 15-year break.
What?
And yeah, I tell everybody, well, you got to understand, I spent more time on a lake by the time I was 10.
Okay, I see where you're going from with that. I haven't really been on the water or went to the beach at
So
all.
I got really burnt out by the time I was 15.
Hello, Curtis? Curtis? Hello? Seems like there seems to be a problem with the internet. That's what happens when you're trying to talk from Alabama to Maryland. It's a big jump gap for technology, apparently.
So I took this like 15-year break. And when I took this break, I was like, I had wanted nothing to do with it. Well, my wife had at the time, 10-year-old daughter or 9-year-old daughter, and she wanted to go fishing too. So I was like, yeah, I'll go fishing. I'll go out with you guys. I probably won't fish, but I'll go with you guys. That way you girls can have fun and hopefully you catch some fish and I'll just get to spend time with you. I like being by water, so I'm cool with that. Well, as soon as we got there, my wife, she's hooked herself up with what she wanted to use and everything. And I looked at what they had and I was like, okay, Destiny, let's go ahead. And I'm gonna put this on your line. This is what I want you to do. And I took her over to this little area. We were sitting on these big, huge water drains, like that went underneath the highway. So we're sitting on top of this, and I'm like, just throw it out there and just reel it in, real nice and slow. And it's all just stuff that I remembered my dad telling me from when I was younger. And we were out there and she caught like 3 or 4 fish in probably a half an hour. And that right there just is probably my best memory of fishing with somebody other than my dad of all time. I mean, just seeing a young child get so excited by catching a fish like I used to. And it was kind of a entryway for me to get back into fishing, even though it still took me a year or so to get fishing again.
But seeing that face on that kid light up, you kind of saw what your dad saw in you when he saw you go fishing with him.
Oh yeah. And it was absolutely amazing. It was so great to see her catch fish. It was really neat. She wouldn't touch them, but it was awesome still to see it.
I think that's the one thing that keeps me away from fishing is once I get it on the hook, I'm sitting there like, somebody get it off of it. Get it off of it. Last time it pissed in my hand. Get it off of it.
So they make these wonderful things now called a lip gripper. So you literally take it and you put it in their mouth and you never have to touch the fish if you don't want to. It's awesome.
What type of things do you think you've seen technology-wise that have been pretty beneficial to the game of bass fishing?
Oh man. So I talked about Livingston Lures. I think that is something that I can see a lot of it. It's the crankbait that had electronics that makes noise and imitates like the sound of bait fish or crawdads or stuff like that in the water. That I think is going to become a bigger part of the game eventually. I think we're still a few years off from that, but I think that is where a lot of crankbaits are going to go to eventually. So recently they had what's called ICAST down in Florida, and it's a fishing industry convention. The biggest and best names of the fishing industry all come together and show you all of their new stuff. There are 3 companies out there that just started making new stuff. You have the Lowrance. They used to make fish finders only and fish finder cards to help you, GPS cards and stuff like that, and GPS units for your boat. to help you get around the lake and be able to, the sonar and all that, to help you see what's underneath you on the lake and what's around you and if there's schools of fish and stuff like that. They just created a trolling motor also. So did Garmin. Like Garmin GPS, they made fish finders and stuff like that as well. Those two both started also making trolling motors this year. And there's been some huge upgrades from Humminbird. They make fish finders and they had a huge upgrade. They have made some huge upgrades to some of their stuff. And the electronics that are on some of these like pros boats right now are absolutely insane. There are fish finders out there that you can throw your lure out in the water and watch on a screen in your boat, watch exactly what that lure is doing just from sonar and different types of sonar-ish type of things. It's just blows my mind. You can watch the fish attack your bait on that screen if you're watching. Now, I don't watch screens like that. I don't have one like that. They're also extremely expensive. But, you know, some of these guys, I'm not going to name any names, but I know there are some of these electronics that are on for sure. I know there is over $50,000 worth of electronics. And that includes these shallow water anchors called power poles or talons. And then I know one guy's got 4 12-inch to 15-inch fish finders, and each one of those are going to cost around $3,000. Your a super high-end trolling motor is going to cost you $3,000 or $4,000. So you have all this amazing stuff to help you do the things that you love. And it's really neat to see we're at this weird bubble in the fishing industry right now where all of this really cool new stuff is coming out. And it's all coming out right now, all at the same time. And it's so neat to see. And I can't wait to start being able to afford some of this stuff and get some of this stuff. And I'm super excited. I mean, there's trolling motors out there where you can back your boat into the water, like your truck down the ramp, and push your boat off of your trailer, and you can control it using a remote control. You can deploy your trolling motor and get it into the water and park it. All by remote control, park it out in the middle of the water while you get in your truck and go and move it. And then when you're walking to the lake or walking down to the ramp, you can hit a button and bring it right over to where you are.
I guarantee you, if you tried telling your dad all that, your dad would be like, no, that's not how you're supposed to do it. Let me tell you something.
Oh, no. My dad passed away back in November. And when me and my dad were talking about it last year, he was like, so Kurtis, when are you going to buy one? I'm like, I can't afford one. He's like, you need to buy one. I'm like, you need to buy one for me. He's like, I can't afford it either. I'm retired. I'm like, well, we need to get one. He's like, we really do, because that's awesome. I mean, I don't even have
that just takes out the whole, like, when first of all, my dad, he won't get any new type of a camping equipment or anything. He sticks to the same old camper, same old ways of camping. And he's like, no, the process is the setup, but that's what makes the experience. That's what the whole thing is. He won't do anything newer. You know, he likes that tasking of setting up the camper, backing it, and doing all these things that he has to do himself because he feels way more accomplished with it. I was just seeing, because as a fisherman, I mean, that's also a process too. Unloading the boat, hooking it back up, washing it off, doing all these things, getting prepped just to enjoy something you do. And the fact that people do that, all this work, just to be able to go out there and enjoy something like that. But I was just wondering, with technology being so advanced in so many ways where it's beneficial to the fishing game, do you think that's also like taking hold of what are some of the key aspects are when it comes to like the process of setting up?
Yeah. There are people in the industry that there's a lot of guys out there that they use their fish finders to fish. Pretty much, if they don't see a fish anywhere on their fish finder, they move, period, which isn't necessarily what you have to do. And they call it fishing or video game fishing, because it's like fishing on a video game, because they're watching that screen more than they're actually watching the water. Now, there's other guys, like I'm one of them. I don't even have a fish finder on the front of my boat. I had one, but I don't use it anymore. I actually broke it, and I haven't got a new one. But I don't even use one. Once I get to the area I'm in, I go by pure instinct and what I know. And a lot of when I had my fish finder on the front, I found myself video game fishing a lot more, and it wasn't working for me. It wasn't something that I've ever done in my life. So why would I start at 38 years old? Why would I start trying to do it now? It didn't work for me when I did do it. So why did I keep doing it? I don't know. It's just one of those things that if you have it, you want to use it. You don't want to waste your money because when
Don't
it's just
have
sitting
it.
on
It
your boat.
doesn't-
Yeah.
It's not even going to bother you. It just doesn't affect you.
Yeah. Like right now, I don't have one on my boat, and I've caught more fish since I haven't had it than I did when I had it. So it does take a part away from it. But some of the really the new ones out, I really want, but it's not to per se video game fish. It's to have the information that I can get from those, because the picture is so clear of what the sonar will read. It's just so picture clear. It's absolutely amazing.
Do you think, like, what would you consider to be the worst things that kind of the world or other people think, whether it's stereotypes or technology, it's kind of affected the fishing game since you were a child?
Well, everybody still to this day, one of the biggest stereotypes with fishermen is that we're all a bunch of rednecks, which we're not. Some of us are. Some of us are really big rednecks, and I've fished with some of them, and I see them every time I'm out on the lake, and there's nothing wrong with them. They're enjoying their passion. I have nothing against redneck. I live in Alabama. I mean, I've lived all over the South, and there's rednecks everywhere. And I don't think they're bad people at all. But there are a lot of other people that do. That think that just because you look at somebody and they might have on camo, oh, there went 30 IQ points. That's so not true. Some of the smartest people I've ever met are some of the
Just
the world
you
would
trying to explain fishing to me, I've already proved you're the Albert Einstein of the lakes, good sir, because just all the stuff you have to take into account, whether you researched it yourself or whether you heard it from somebody else, it doesn't matter. That's already knowledge in a whole nother category of what is still knowledge. A lot of people don't consider that.
right. And when people look, okay, so let's talk about this. I went to the Bassmaster Classic, the biggest fishing tournament in the world. It's an invite only. You have to earn your spot into this tournament. I went back in March, and I got to meet some of the coolest pros and got to talk to a lot of people, and it was absolutely one of the coolest things I've ever done since I've really been hardcore fishing in my adult life. Those guys, some of those guys that I met and talked to, yes, they fish professionally, and some of them make pretty good money, but some of those guys are probably the smartest people I've ever met. And it has nothing to do with they're just smart in fishing. They're smart in everything. They're also some of the hardest working people, because they have to grind it out every day to try to make, when they're in a tournament, they have like 8 hours every day to catch fish, and they have to catch fish to make money. That's all there is to it. And they have to really grind it out some days. They weren't prepared for a weather change, or they weren't prepared for this, and they grind it out, man. They're just hardworking guys and girls. There's quite a few now. There's not as many women on the pro level, but more of on like the semi-pro-ish type area in the open series and the state level series and stuff that they have. There's a lot more women than you would actually think. But it's something that people just don't think that, oh, it's all a bunch of poor rednecks. No, let me tell you, the boat I want is $107,000. There is nothing cheap about the game of fishing at all. I mentioned 4 bags of lures earlier. That's probably $6,000 to $7,000 worth of lures, not including the 10 rods and reels that are in my truck right now. And you add that up, and that's probably another $5,000 to $10,000 worth of rods and reels.
Damn.
Yeah, I use most of the reels that I use are made by one company, and I spend per reel minimum of $150
Holy crap, dude.
for one reel. Not even a rod, just the reel.
How do you do all that? And then like, still like after a hard day of work, be like, oh, great. Now my money's going to fishing. You don't even think of it that way.
It's an investment. My reel's going to last me a long time.
Oh my God, dude. Like, dude, it takes me forever to spend $5 on a t-shirt. You're talking about spending $150. I'm seeing as, you know what I could be buying with that? But no, you're chasing after something a lot of people don't even take time to 2 seconds to learn about. Like it's an art that is seen as like, it's on TV and but it's only popular in certain cultures, or not cultures, certain areas and certain trends. You know, why the fact that when most people say fishing, they think of you as an idiot or some type of redneck? I'm like, that's not true though, because I know fishermen that are shirtless wearing board shorts that are just enjoying, I mean, it seems like they all wear Oakleys, but they're just enjoying life. They're just enjoying this, like, it's just a sense of relaxing.
Okay, so it's not only Oakleys, they wear Costas too.
Oh yeah, Costa's a big fucking thing too.
Yeah, Costas.
Every time I see a
huge.
Facebook picture of a guy holding up a fish, he either has the Oakleys or Costa's sunglass tan, or he's got them on his face.
I quit buying the expensive sunglasses because I lose them, and I'm not going to drop another pair of sunglasses in a lake.
That was my first advice being a jet ski guide. They're like, don't wear anything important on your face. And I'm like, why? And next thing I know, I lost my $200, or not $200 pair, but like $60 pair of sunglasses. I was like, that sucks. They're like, yep, it's gone forever. I'm like, yep, the water sucked it up. All you hear is the bloop, bloop, bloop of it going underwater.
Speaking of things dropping in the water, I totally dropped my wedding band in the water at a lake 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago.
Have you totally did that yet?
Oh, she was there. We were actually out on a friend's boat. We were like one weekend we'll try to do the recreational thing where we go out. We have another couple that are friends with us, and we'll go out to a different lake that's more recreational stuff. You can go tubing and swimming and stuff like that. And you can do that in Guntersville, but that's not their favorite kind of lake, or that's not their favorite lake. And it's mainly a fishing lake anyway. So we use Guntersville as fishing, and then Tim's Ford Lake at Tennessee as our like recreational place. And she was swimming in the water, and I was sitting on the back of our friend's boat, and I was just sitting there playing, just spinning my ring on my finger and just, fiddling with it. And all of a sudden I moved my hand and bloop, there it went right in the water. Bounced right off my buddy's back. I was like, crap. So yeah, totally.
Did she throw you off the boat?
No, I told her, she looked at me, our friends looked at me like, oh my God, you better go get it. I'm like, it's 80 feet deep here. Not happening.
Yeah, it's gone forever.
It's gone. No. And I looked at my wife and I was like, you can't say anything, because she's lost too.
Oh, okay. It's easy. So you're okay. You're in the clear.
Yeah, I was in the clear for this one. So she lost one in Virginia Beach when I took her to Virginia Beach for the first time a few years ago. And I was like, I can't even be mad at you. But we bought her a new one right before we ever left Virginia Beach. So that was cool.
You know what's crazy? I think they should develop a technology that has like some type of sensor that picks up those wedding bands and important stuff that gets lost off your boat. I think that'd probably be the best invention for fishermen, instead of a type of lure that makes noises and stuff. Yeah, that helps. Right. But honestly, the amount of stuff you lose when you go on a fishing trip, from flip flops to, essential like things that you need, like that are expensive. Like, I mean, that's something we probably should be looking at.
Right. I lost a hat about a month and a half ago, and I have been on a boat enough to know that when you start to go, you take your hat off and you put it under your leg, or you put it in the cubby or something where it's not going to go flying.
Well, sometimes you forget.
Yeah, totally did. It was it was the weekend before 4th of July. And we were cruising across the water after we watched some fireworks, which if you've never seen fireworks while sitting on a boat
You're missing
in the
out.
middle of the water, it is the greatest thing I have ever done in my life. I've done it for the last 2 years now on 2 different lakes. And let me tell you, it's the coolest thing ever. I never thought it could get any better than just watching it laying there like in the field with 400,000 other people. No, that's nothing. Watching it on a boat, there's something about it that just is absolutely transcending. It is the most calming, relaxing. You can appreciate stuff because it's just you, the water, and the fireworks. Even though there's, 200 boats around you. But even you don't even, once the fireworks start, you don't even realize they're there anymore. And it's dark out. You really can't see anything but red and green lights across the water. And it's just absolutely, so absolutely neat.
Dude, I mean, you being able to go off and be able to experience these types of things that I don't really get a chance to do. I can't even say that get a chance to do. I don't have the wantingness or passion to chase after it. It's awesome because it really shows and highlights the aspect of what I tried to start with my podcast, that we all have something that interests us. We all have something that, is awesome about us that we want to pursue, that we want to do. Is this something you want to do for the rest of your life? Do you feel like you're comfortable at where you're at, or do you feel like you have a career or something you still want to kind of chase after?
I'll never be a pro fisherman, but I'll talk about it a lot.
I'll follow the pages.
Now, I do want to tournament fish. I don't want to be a pro. Now, if I was to make it to being a pro, super sweet, but I don't want to be a pro. I don't want to go. I want to do tournaments, but I want to do local tournaments and I want to do statewide tournaments. I don't want to go. I used to think I wanted to chase the dream and go and be a pro fisherman. But after getting to meet a lot of these guys and getting to talk to a lot of the guys, I've realized they're on the road sometimes for months at a time, coming home for 3 days and then back on the road.
Not really seeing their family and stuff. A lot of people don't even take into account the emotional toll that goes on fishermen. That's why a lot of golf players and a lot of sport athletes usually take their families on the road with them because, they don't ever get a chance to spend time with them when they're just constantly going from place to place.
Right. And a lot of the guys, like I've talked to a bunch, like I literally have phone numbers for like a bunch of pros in my phone right now. So I've talked to these guys quite regularly and I've talked to them at different tournaments and different things. And, oh, excuse me. And these guys, a lot of them are at a point where they can afford to bring their significant others or their kids with them. A lot of the places they go. But during school time, because a lot of the big tournaments, pro fishing tournaments, start in January and February, all the kids are still in school. Until school lets out, a lot of them, the wives or girlfriends or have to stay at home with the kids while the guys go out and go fishing. And they go and pre-fish for a week. And then they might go and do a tournament somewhere else. And then they'll go back to where they just pre-fished and fish in the tournament for a week. And then they go to another lake where they'll pre-fish and then go to another, it's just a constant battle of trying to get to where you need to be and being where you have to be and all the different engagements. And,
I think we both can come to a conclusion and say that it's all about the experience.
My wife has a tattoo on her ankle that says life is an adventure, and that's how we live our life.
That's a beautiful way to do it because a lot of people choose to think it's just nothing. And I'm like, nope, it's all about the experience. Life's what you make it, man.
It really is. So we've talked a lot about fishing, but can I bring up something else that I'm really passionate about too?
Go ahead.
Okay. So
if you tell me you own a fishing club, I'm gonna hit you.
I am the president of a fishing club.
Oh, Jesus.
I am, but it's back in Missouri, so I'm not active president right now.
You're away from your people.
Yeah, but I moved down here. But I'm still technically the president until I go back up there and tell them who I've decided to be the new president. Which they already know who it is. Then the guy's already taken over and done everything anyway. So, but I just haven't officially done it. But anyway, so I'm going to tell a little story and I'm going to give a little words of wisdom if you don't mind.
Please do.
So a little over 3.5 years ago, my wife and I lost our 14-year-old daughter due to suicide.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry, man.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Um, I want to say this. She was being bullied at school, social media, everything that a kid could do to basically torment another child was being done to her. And my wife and I fought and fought and fought with the schools and trying our best to make sure everything, we were trying to protect her as much as we could. And eventually she did what she did, and we can't change that now. But there is an epidemic that is going on in this country right now that doesn't get talked about enough. It's bullying. There is more people than you would ever imagine that just need a hug, need a friend, need a little bit of kindness because they're being tormented by bullies. And it's not just kids. Adults bully people too. And it's everywhere in life. Please, if anybody out there is listening, or to all of your listeners, please, next time you want to be mean to somebody, just think twice, because you never know what else is on that guy's shoulders or that girl's shoulders. And that person might not be here tomorrow if you make that one comment.
I always relate it to the best experiences when you talk about Kyle Hines' story, the guy that jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge.
Mm-hmm.
He said that if someone would have just said hi to him while he was crying on the bus and asked what was wrong, or just even gave him a glance, that instead of ignoring him, he wouldn't have had the courage to take the steps off that bus and take that jump. And I went to school for mental health. I went to school for all these types of things. And for someone that suffers and has been bullied, that has picked up a unhealthy habit of going to the gym every single day, literally breaking his body down just to be able to work out. If I don't work out for 2 hours, I don't feel accomplished. I don't feel like I can go on with the day. I have to have that window. And if anything messes up my routine, I get freaky about it. And that's stuff I have to overcome, because I pulled bullying out of school where I was made fun of for being overweight. Now the people that make fun of me compliment me on my six pack. Do I hold hatred towards them? No, but I use that anger and aggression to help me get through. And a lot of people don't see it in that light. A lot of people choose the easiest road, is jumping or doing something dangerous that hurts themselves or others around them. And it's the biggest thing. I always talk about how society, we're constantly judging. We're in a world of judgment. I think we need to end it. We need to end that from the world. Once we truly restrict anything or do anything, we're constantly pulling out the ruler and comparing sizes, just like you would compare sizes of fish. We're constantly, the world is one giant comparison. And if you don't have, or if you have something that makes you different, society rejects that. People reject that. I don't like that. I choose to be my own person. I choose that when I talk to you, hopefully when someone asks you who I was or how was I, you would say he was Robbie. And that brings the biggest spark to my life, because I want people to take and get their experience from me, not from some person, not from some other voice, not from what they just choose to justify as a classification. I thought, like, hey, I start this podcast, I'm going to get everybody's experiences and stories. I want to hear everybody's thoughts on the world. Everyone from every country I've podcasted with, and the hundreds of people I've podcasted with, have all come to the same conclusion, that society is hurt in a way because people are constantly just overlooking people's emotions and others just to save themselves from embarrassment or save themselves from pain. And I'm like, that's not how you have to do it. You shouldn't have to take your anger out at somebody else. I do it all the time. I don't mean to do it. And I catch myself now doing it, and I realize it's wrong. But as a team, people need to start working together and stop looking at races or all these things, and start looking at people as the human race. The only box you should have to check on a census is robot or not robot.
Agreed. It's funny because I talk about being nice to people, because that's all it takes a lot of times. It's just to be nice. You can have disagreements, but it doesn't mean that you have to be mean in your disagreements. You don't have to you don't have to agree with everybody blindly. Everybody has their own opinions. But if you know that opinion is going to hurt somebody else, why bring it up? Or why try to pressure your opinion onto somebody else? That bothers me. I mean, the other day, this is no bullshit. The other day I was at work and I had to go to the bathroom. So I'm in there going to the bathroom, going number 2. And 2 of the guys I worked with literally walked in and were talking shit about me. Talking about all kinds of stuff.
Were they talking about like you just at work, or were they talking about you taking a shit? Because people talk shit on people taking a shit.
They do. But no, they were talking shit on me as a person. They're like, I'm a horrible person. They were trying to say that I think I'm better than everybody else and all this stuff, which is so not me at all. I'm not like that. I try to be, everything I do at work and life is try to be helpful to other people. I don't need to justify who I am to myself. I just try to be helpful to everybody else, because if I can make their life better, that makes everybody's life as a whole better. And that one of the guys, I didn't know who it was at the time. I didn't find out till today. And I was on break, and yes, I smoke, and I was sitting outside smoking a cigarette. And one of the guys came out and asked if he could borrow my lighter. And all I said was, yep, here you go. And he said, thank you. I was like, no problem, man, anytime. It was me being nice. I knew who it was. And I might have added in there a little bit of, yeah, I don't want anybody to think I'm better than somebody else, in a slightly passive aggressive way, but I was still super nice. And he just kind of taken back, and you could tell that he knew that I heard what he had to say, but I didn't go any farther. And hopefully he won't say stuff about me again. And if he does, he'll be like, oh, well, maybe that wasn't the nicest thing to do, because I was still nice to him.
Anything you say about somebody behind their back that you won't have the courage to say to their face isn't a problem within them. It's a problem within yourself. It's not something, it's just something they're holding on to, like something that pissed them off, and they decide they can bond over something by making fun of somebody else. We're constantly looking to take the pressure off our own shoulders and not focus on why is that pressure on me and how can I change that? And I think the world will be better once we start figuring that out. I mean, bullying is a big factor, and that's something that's seen throughout history, obviously, but the fact that technology is making it so much easier for that to go anywhere and go so far that it's so dangerous now.
It is, and it's really weird. My wife and I have talked immensely about social media and bullying and everything, and we have come to the conclusion, we've figured out what the difference is, because we're both in my wife and I are, my wife's in her mid-30s and I'm almost 40. And we know what between then, the bullying back when we were young, and bullying when we were in school. We went to school for whatever, 8 hours or whatnot. Went to school for 8 hours. We went home. We had a break. We didn't get bullied relentlessly. We got bullied at school. We got home. We got to hang out with our friends in our neighborhood, maybe, and we did our homework. We hung out. We played. We did whatever. But we had a break from the bullies most of the time. And then we would go to school the next day refreshed and had a break from it and got our brains back on track to be able to handle being bullied again. With social media now and how far it reaches into these, I mean, even preteens, so many of them have Instagram and Snapchat and Facebook and Twitter. Don't get me wrong. I have Facebook. I have Instagram. I have all the social medias like most people do. I have Twitter and all that. But I never use it for anything negative. It's all positives, But these kids, like my daughter, she would go to school for 8 hours, get bullied there. Then she'd come home, and then she would be bullied on Instagram or on Twitter or whatever social media she was on besides, well, she was mainly just on Instagram. But she would get bullied on Instagram, and it was just nonstop. And these kids have these cell phones and text messaging and all this stuff. And it was just a continuous battle trying to help her get through all of this, which she ended up doing what she did, but it absolutely is something she never really got a break except when she was sleeping. And that's a big thing. And these parents need to teach their kids that they don't need to make fun of other kids. If you've got something going on in your life, deal with your stuff going on in your life. Don't take it out on other people. I mean, adults the same way. I mean, I know that if I've had a bad day, there's times that I'm kind of a little short with my wife, and I know it's not the right thing, but as soon as I do it, usually I'm like, oh crap, that wasn't meant for her. Like, I am so sorry, honey. I did not mean it that way. But people don't realize that their actions matter in some people, in a lot of people's lives, and that words hurt. Words hurt big time. People say sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will never hurt. Bullshit, they hurt. They hurt, sometimes worse than sticks and stones, because it's not a physical hurt. It's a mental, and it's a heartbreak that can just destroy and just wear on people.
Yeah, there's so many problems with the world today that why do we need to be another problem added to the mix? I think more people need to realize, like, to truly understand what someone is going through, put themselves in your shoes. And I appreciate you, first of all, coming onto my podcast, ranting about fishing. That's something I don't even know. And let me tell you, that was awesome. But also being able to open up to me and to listeners out there who might be experiencing really some tough times, and just truly being able to open up like that, it meant the world, dude. Because I mean, first of all, learning about how deep you go into fishing, that's awesome. I commend you for it. I'm not going to change my lifestyle. I still prefer going to the store to buy my fish, but
which is funny. I don't even eat fish at
so
all.
would you just catch and release?
Yeah, I don't fish it. I don't eat any fish I eat.
Damn, you don't even keep what you catch?
No, most of the time, no.
Do you take Instagram pictures?
I do.
Okay, that's all right.
Yeah, Facebook and Instagram pictures. Yeah, there's a few there.
Well, I appreciate you, first of all, giving us that. It opened up into your heart and your mind on just society in general, and also opening up your heart and mind to about fishing, about letting us all kind of experience through your eyes what fishing is like. And that changed at least my way of thinking about bass in a way, and also that trash can I caught, I give myself a little bit more credit.
Hey, it weighs more than the biggest bass I've ever caught. So hey,
it was a pain in the ass, man. I swear to God, I need to create a fish story with that. I fought the sea, I fought the monster for 7 years. And but it was awesome having you on. I want to give you a minute at the end here to be able to plug your anything you want people to follow you on, or maybe your podcast in general that you can give a quick listen to.
Okay. So you can follow me on Instagram. I'm on Instagram on nvision, and it's the letter N, the word vision, _fishing without the G, like fishing without the G, FISHIN. Podcast _podcast at Instagram. And then you can also just look up the Envision Fishing Podcast on Facebook as well. And I'm on there. And I'm also on Stitcher and Apple Podcasts. Actually, I just lied. I'm in the middle of changing hosts. So I'm not on any of them right now, but I will be in the next week or two. I'm changing hosts and lost all kinds of stuff. So
yeah, probably when this episode goes up, it'll all be already switched over.
Yeah, hopefully. So look for me on those. It's the Envision Fishing Podcast. I have some really awesome conversations about fishing with some really funny dudes, including I have one with my dad before he passed away, which is still by far my favorite podcast. But my last final little things that I have to say is, when you're out in nature, leave it like you found it. Clean up after yourselves, or make it a little bit better. And 2, remember, everybody, words hurt. Be nice.
I like that. Thanks for ending on that. And I do actually want to end with one thing I need you to say for me. I need you to say fishing.
Fishing.
Yes. All right, everybody. That was a podcast with Kurtis Clark. Thanks for listening.
Thanks,
Thank
man.
you, Kurtis, for being on.
Thank you.